glad to be coming back home. Extremely challenging opponent. Now we have the combination of elite players with elite coaching, and so this is the best of the best. I texted Finebaum on the way over here when I saw him, his quotes like he normally does, and says the Nick Saban dynasty is over and all that. And every time he says this, which I tell him, all he does is, I call it like goat fuel, opposite of rat poison. He's just like giving the goat fuel, which for him that works, and he goes and proves them wrong every time. So really appreciate Paul saying that right after the game. So I'm sure that was on his desk Sunday morning. So, they always ready to play. They always rebound over the years, and you're going to go play the best offensive player in the country and the best defensive player in the country. So it's a very challenging situation, but glad to be home. Had a nice long home winning streak here, and would obviously assume the crowd will be great.
Lane, obviously working with Saban for those couple of years, I mean, how different is he coming off a loss compared to coming off a win? I mean, we've all seen it, but you've been behind the scenes with him. What's kind of the biggest differences, and what did you notice kind of the most from him after a loss?
Well, there weren't many of them. There were only three. There were only 2 regular seasons in 3 years, both to Ole Miss. I thought he was phenomenal. You would maybe expect it to be the other way, like he comes in and, everything's, the end of the world, like some coaches do. He does a really good job of addressing exactly what it was. And remember, guys, like Finebaum's stupid statement, dynasty's over. They've lost 2 games by 2 plays. Both games could win either way. Alabama makes the field goal at Tennessee, and 2-point gets stopped. And they're number 1, number 2 team in the country coming in here. So we're talking about 2 plays, 2 teams on the road in 2 of the hardest environments, over 100,000 people at both games to play in. So this is a great team, and the best coach to ever do it.
Lane, I know building up quality depth has kind of been an emphasis these last few off seasons for teams like Alabama, who obviously have that sort of depth. Does this team feel better equipped for teams like Alabama than maybe your first couple teams?
I don't know. I still think we have depth issues, especially as the injuries were mounting. We certainly did. They've showed up a lot on defense. It's easily noticed our defensive issues once we lost some people over these last few weeks, and our numbers over there have been dramatically different. So I do think we're better than I've said all along. This is our best roster of the 3 years of collection of talent, but it does not mean it'll be the best team. So we're still coming together. I know that sounds crazy this late in the year, but with so many pieces, and I don't know, I think it says in there 55% or something of the team's new, something like that. So, hopefully we keep moving up.
I know you've talked about this before. Obviously, your father was a legendary NFL defensive coordinator. You coached with Pete Carroll, but it seems like Nick Saban, and please feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, Nick Saban has had more of an impact on the way that you coach now than maybe Carroll or even your dad did. Is that accurate? And if so, why do you think that is?
I think that's probably just later in the career. It's fresher coming off of it. So, being there the 3 years, I was with Coach Carroll for 6 years, and known my dad forever. So I think that's more just because it was the latest part, and you took a lot of how that was done, and then that was done in the SEC, in this region, the way Coach did it and stuff. So I think that's more just a combination of those 2 things.
I know last year Will Anderson was a really big emphasis. I imagine he will be again this year. Just what makes him such a great player from your perspective?
I think he's just such a unique combination of speed and power. He reduces down and plays on guards, which is very unusual, and then he speed rushes, and then he drops too. So, that really doesn't seem to happen now as much. That was kind of the old 3-4 outside backer and then reduce, but he still does that. So it's just really unique combination, and he plays with relentless effort.
From, I know, we're talking about Saban and all this stuff, how great he is, but from like the pure football perspective on like rosters and that type of deal, how do you feel like you guys kind of match up against Bama?
Well, I mean, that kind of gets into a lot of game planning stuff, but I mean, these guys have great players and great schemes. That's not the typical rat boys. I mean, they do. I mean, you look at the draft every year, and you'll see it again this year. You know, and not often that you got a returning Heisman Trophy winner and the best player in the country. You know, at positions where one touches the ball every down and the other one's lined up really close to the quarterback. So those are really the two best positions to have the best players at. So you got to do everything right in order to beat these guys. You got to coach really well, play really well, win situations, manage things, take risks. You know, there's a reason why they're the best over time, you know, what they do. And again, we're talking about when they played them, two of the hottest teams in the country, on the road in two of the hardest environments to play, and they were one-play games. Or we're talking about, you know, really if they win those two, then they're the number one team in the country coming in here.
Lane Gibbs, their running back who transferred in, doesn't seem to be your atypical bruising power running back, but terrific speed, more like a chain maybe from A&M. You don't change anything particularly for him, do you?
Yeah, great player. You know, really dynamic in what he does and gives you issues. And like you said, not, you know, old school, but really their offense isn't either. So he really fits into what their offense is, because that's not the old Alabama offense from years ago either. You know, he's not the big bruising back that from a long time ago. So, and Bryce certainly isn't the physical stature of the old school quarterback. So I think it just fits in really well with what they do.